Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 14 of my Pyanodon's playthrough. In this episode, we are going to greatly upgrade our factory's logistics with splitters and valves. Enjoy! We can make the splitter with a circuit board and the inserter with a mechanical inserter and some other stuff. So we definitely want that. And also, let's do fluid handling. I put it off for a little bit, but now it's time. It gives us the ability to make empty barrels, and then we can actually grind the empty barrels back into steel at a 65% return if we wanted to do that. And of course we can barrel anything. It gives us the barreling machine and 3 valves. First, the check valve. It allows you to read the fluid contents and send it to the circuit network. So it's basically like a tiny tank, and you can combine it with a pump with a simple wire to create underflow or overflow conditions. And we actually get to underflow and overflow valves. All they require is a circuit board and some parts. If you don't have the configurable valves, then these default to 80% for overflow and 20% for underflow. However, I did install that mod so we can adjust it in 10% increments. And I have set the default to be 90% for overflow and 10% for underflow. So we'll hit that real quick and then go into the settings. And we want to go to the valves library here. And we're already in game, so it won't show it. But the default was 80% and I adjusted it to 90. And the default to top up was 20 and I adjusted it to 10. Also, the default pumping speed was only 1200, and that's really slow. I don't know how fast the fluids are going to need to be, but nonetheless, the Pi valves work at 6000, so I just adjusted it to 6000. And I waited on using those valves until now because without having storage tanks, there's only so much you can do with them. So having storage tanks will allow there to be a buffer. And storage tanks gives us a ton of them. It unlocks the vanilla one, which is steel, duralumin, lead plates. And then you have a ton of sizes, starting at 10K and working your way up to basically 100K. And some of these tanks require inputs of previous tanks, and they all generally require lead and duralumin in some amount. And you can put anything in any of them, although some of them look like they're meant for liquids and some of them look like they're meant for gases, and I am going to respect that, but it doesn't really matter. So between these tanks and the valves, we can actually have some decent logic on our fluids. So no more wasting of fluid, if possible. Well, it's been a minute, so let's go back and check up on that cellulose. Well, it's looking a lot better. There's not a huge line of cellulose, just deteriorating. So this is the idle state. And yeah, seems good. And actually, it looks like these already deteriorated. And this is a really good way of doing it because now that it's steady, they're not just constantly producing more. Because these are trying to put the input in, but these aren't letting them exit. So I think we fixed the problem. And now we have a bunch of biocrud, but oh well. We will deal with it later. We could handcraft these, but why not just put it on our bus because we can. To make the inserter comes from regular inserters. And what's funny is our bus is about to become twice as fast because pretty much every building is limited by inserters. So that's not going to be the case anymore. But for now, we should still plan around that. Okay, starting to get circuits, so let's push this in. And this seems like as good a place as any to pull off resources. So it very awkwardly snakes in here. And now that we have these, there's basically no reason to use the mechanical ones anymore. I mean, you can if you want to min-max it and not use any electricity, but it is worse for UPS, and it just kind of looks bad to have a bunch of inserters when, you know, less would have worked. So it's up to you. I would say if it's in a situation where there's no electricity there and getting it there would be hard, then maybe use mechanical ones, but you're going to find that pretty much every situation you're going to have power next to where these inserters are, so you might as well use them. Now that we have these inserters, we can basically double the output of our minibus here, because coming in here to the inserter screen, it's not quite double, but it goes from basically 0.78 to 1.2. And we also do get an additional filter slot if you wanted to use it, but we can test this here where it's 0.77 and now it's 1.2. So everything is about to get faster. If we take these power poles and put them on the tops and bottoms of the machines, because we gave ourselves space for that. It means we can retrofit pretty much every single one of these with electric inserters without issue. So we could try to calculate these builds again, but since they were all limited by inserters, then theoretically, if we just double up every inserter we have, it should still be inserter balanced. That is, unless we actually max out the machine. But I don't really want to calculate all these again, so I'd rather just replace the inserters. They still need to have all of their associated filters. Making them electric does not make them immune to ash. And there we go, it has been upgraded. And it's clearly still inserter limited on the small parts machine. Although it's actually pretty close now. But nonetheless, we have doubled our small parts output and basically have changed nothing about our minibus here. So I usually just replace inserters that are in situations where having the faster speed would be nice. And I leave basically any non-problematic inserter where it is. So clearly we would want to access our item boxes faster, so it makes sense to have faster inserters there. And of course, pretty much anything on the minibus, we would want to have faster inserters. It is a little grindy, replacing all of these without robots, but what can you do? It's interesting looking at our power network and seeing the high pressure furnaces blast on, blast off, blast on, blast off. I believe those are all the cellulose machines that are pulsing to keep the decay to a minimum. And it looks like we're actually limited on duralumin right now. I'm wondering if we should build a second one of these just to process faster, but it's really just going through a buffer. Yeah, sure, let's do a second one. So it has a greater burst capacity, and then our copper belt can actually just come along here and merge again. And I guess we'll start using our electric inserters. And there we go. It's a zigzag, but it works. That will give us a much higher burst capacity. Sometimes you have to turn off alt mode. The game feels so naked when you turn it off. But sometimes it can help looking for the mechanical inserters. But I think that's most of them for the minibus anyway. And that's where it counts. We'll be continuously pouring more mechanical inserters into this box as we get rid of them throughout the factory. But for now, we're making more. So how about some splitters, huh? And we essentially have a new limit because our inserters are faster. We already have some machines here we can use, so we want to try to reuse it if possible. So this won't necessarily go at full speed here. I guess we might as well just make it a chest. But it won't really have to. We don't use splitters that much. And we already have a little slot in here we can use for the circuits. And we need room for a chest too, so one thing at a time here. Yes, that makes sense that that would be an achievement. And this might be a situation where we just don't want to pull the ash off of this one machine, because fixing this in any other way is really awkward. So let's do that. It's not going to run very much, and it's pretty much guaranteed to never fill up on us. So there we go. We have splitters now. And I downloaded a new mod to make using the splitters a little easier. The name of the mod is Breathe In. Button to quickly block unused splitter lane or do the same when flipping one without any priorities. I love that name. So this is basically an auto filter mod for splitters. And I changed the setting here. So depending on the orientation of the belts, it will automatically put a no item filter on it. And this does overlap a little bit with the filter helper mod, but filter helper is not automatic. You still have to click on the buttons. This mod makes setting the filters automatic. So let's say you have a splitter and you just place it. You could come in and using filter helper, you can say, oh, I don't want an item there, or I don't want an item there. Or if you didn't have filter helper, you would come through here and pick something. I usually do the wooden chest just because it's the first thing and you're never going to have wooden chests on a belt. But a lot of people like to use the deconstruction planner, and that works too. So what this mod does is give you some options. So let's say you had a splitter here. You can say block lane, and it will actually automatically pick the correct lane for you. So we can put another one in here, flip the sides, come in here and say block lane, and it does it for us. But the mod's even cooler than that, because let's say you had some belts you wanted to do, like this. Now you can just put the splitter in there, and it will automatically pick the side for you. It has some limitations. The main thing being it's looking at how you've placed these belts. So if you place the splitter first, you know, it doesn't know what you did, but you could always pick it up and put it back to make it work. Or you can come in after the fact and just hit block lane and it'll pick the side for you. And you could do it manually too if you want. But it is pretty dynamic, so let's say you do something weird, like you only have one belt, and then you put the splitter in. That still counts, because you only have one output, so it knows to put that in there. And let's say you didn't want that later on, you know, you can just change it later. For someone who doesn't like to have junk sitting on the end of splitters not being used, this is a really cool feature. And just like that, 50 splitters. So we are now in a post-splitter Factorio world. I can scarcely imagine what we can do with this. Because it completely changes everything. That said, you probably don't want to go throughout the factory putting splitters everywhere where you could, because you might end up breaking something. And technically this works fine. So I would say don't retrofit anything unless it's going to create a noticeable and immediate benefit. So we can kind of check for this in our factory by looking for empty belts. So obviously this belt is pretty well utilized, but other belts, like for our ores here, like they're completely empty. We could just make a junk belt with all manners of stuff and just use splitters like you would to split them apart. And that would save us belt lanes, which would absolutely clean up the factory and just give us more space for other things. And this machine is falling behind on soot. Barely, but it is, and that makes sense that it's only so fast. And honestly, I was waiting on upgrading it until now, because this is the perfect thing to upgrade with splitters. And by the way, if you look at the tooltip for this machine, it has run 38,000 times cleaning up soot. So I don't even know what to do here. There's so many choices. I think we'll want to go to the right here, but we don't need to sort ore anymore. In all of this, we can just have a single output. We don't even need to separate the ash either. We can put that on the junk belt. Not only that, we don't even need to be putting plates on this belt. We could combine that on our junk belt too. Alright then, well, to upgrade, we're going to need a second machine. And I don't normally like to mash machines together, but because of the positions of the belts, I will this time. And we do need to move this machine down, because it has to be on the end. And it was inserter limited before, so it won't be now. Where it's 5.7 divided by 1.2. So 5 inserters. And with these short poles, it is going to be kind of crazy with poles being everywhere, but oh well. And then our 3 outputs. Honestly, we could probably combine it with this stone belt too. I'm kind of worried it might be a bit much to be on one belt, but you know what? Let's do it. What's the worst that could happen? So first we will stop the belt, and let's pull that apart so when we put this here, it automatically gets the filter on the right side and nothing gets through. We should probably do a balancer in here just to fully utilize the belt. And there we go. Let's use the belt visualizer to figure out where this is going and stop it. So right here, because we need to make sure the logic is correct for where everything is going. But now we're going to find ourselves suddenly with all these extra belts that we don't need anymore. Even this belt we probably can remove. Yeah, basically anytime there's an empty belt of anything, that's a byproduct belt. And then that is a candidate for something that can use splitters to have a mixed belt of junk that you can then deal with. So let's say to the right we'll go the stone, and then that will go to where it needs to. And to the left will be everything else. And we have another junk belt. It's hard to see, but it's right here. And I guess we'll leave all this in here, since it works, that it's going to combine right here. It looks so wrong seeing all that junk in here, but man, splitters are amazing. And then follow these down the chain. And this is something we're going to want to upgrade. Basically, we just want to look at the belt and look at all the things that are on the belt and sort it accordingly. So there's clearly gravel in there, And this other belt, that's going really far away. That's for lead. It really doesn't need to do that. We can send it in from a different location. We're gonna have so many belts in our inventory when we're all done with this. Just this one change is going to be a huge logistical simplification. I'm telling you, we're in a new world now, and that world is splitters. I say that right as we pass by that. That stays. I'm not touching that. It works. So there doesn't need to be anything there. This can keep going. Looks like it's kind of clogging up back there, which I wouldn't expect it to. Let's stop it here. Because of the way that I placed it, it put a filter on there. So you do have to be careful with how you place it and make sure that the automatic filter isn't placed correctly if you are using it for the automatic filters, which I am. That's the whole point of the mod. But you do have to kind of change how you use it a little bit. But look at all of that. It's so bad. Okay then, well, this obviously can be improved. I don't even know where to start. Well, to start, it's gone. So that helps. Having splitters is nice, but it's still kind of nuts doing all of this stuff. And actually, so much is going on here, we probably want to have some lights, just so we can see. Okay then, that should get a lot of it sorted, so let's see if it does. Actually, we could do iron plates here as well. Also, we could do the copper plates, although it would be awkward to get in there. So yes, we'll do iron and copper, and some advanced foundry so we don't have to worry about ash or anything like that. And then we'll get a mixed belt of output. But we have splitters, so it'll work. I think this is good. Well, since this is all going to the same place, let's take off all of those iron plates as well. So what is this going to look like? Well, so far so good. It is actually working. Why are there two belts of iron here? I think one of them is coming from all the way down here, so we do need to start removing these. Because these extra belts might confuse us about what the logic is. Because that is clearly no longer required, and I'm guessing this other one isn't either. Nope. Simply having splitters is only half the battle. The rest of it continues for eternity. Oh my god. Okay then. To the left goes the iron, and the right goes the copper. Let's see if this works. Seemingly. Okay then. Well, we need to keep this going because we're going to get loaded up on byproducts very quickly. And more belts. This one definitely can be removed now. One more huge belt we don't need. It is a bit of preparation here to do all of this, but empty belts are bad. There's only so many spots to put belts and to have spaghetti, and empty spaghetti is the worst kind because it's not doing anything. Taking these belts out one at a time is starting to make sense of it all. We know we're going to want the aluminum to the left, and then everything else goes up. So let's just block it off there for now and make sure that there's nothing weird on these belts. Doesn't appear to be. Unfortunately though, this ash is bad. Is it going to clear anytime soon? Yeah, it's getting there. But for now, so we can continue testing this, there we go. We're starting to see flow. Fortunately, that one inserter may not be enough with the amount of ash that's in here. So we'll do a second one. There we go. It's actually kind of awesome to see a belt that's that dirty. I couldn't even tell you how many different types of items are on there. It's a lot. But they seem to be getting sorted properly and starting to build up the duralumin and the circuit boards, but there's our belt now with the junk. Alright, let's connect it. Why is that belt not going though? Oh, just inserter limited. Well, we can fix that with a splitter as well. So let's try to maintain the sides if possible. So if we did that and then had a filter to the left for the dust, now it can full flow and it doesn't care about inserters. Sooner or later we are actually going to find ourselves overloaded on this belt because we're going to have way more coal dust than the other things, but we could actually make it a mixed belt as well and just have it be a jumble and then sort it later. Okay, the ore got here. That will pull off the lead and it'll go where it needs to. And is everything going? Yes, this is a little slow, but this is another situation where we can just use a splitter like a normal person, and might as well remove these undergrounds where they're not needed. And there we go, and now that's going at full blast. And our ore made it here, and this can actually function as our junk chest because there are filters on these, so nothing should make it here except for these ores, if it has all been done correctly. And there's not much there, so either it has caught up or it's clogged. So which is it? It's clogged. Well, we have another junk belt that's not being used for anything here, so we can remove it. There are some growing pains. You have something that works perfectly fine, and then you go in and change stuff, and now it's all broken. And that's kind of where we're at. Let's see, we might be able to keep this going by just picking up some plates for our personal uses. So that should help a little bit in getting this going again. It really doesn't need to run that fast. There we go. It's like an old vehicle trying to get it started. You have to crank it a while. But it's going. And I did see some sulfur in there, so we'll have to make sure that's set up. But yeah, it looks like it's caught up and it's going now. And it's clogged up again. So there we go. A nice buffer to hopefully avoid any issues. Once the copper catches up, which it looks like it's about to, this should run smoother. It certainly seems like it's going. I'm still kind of blown away at how crazy that is. Well, that belt filled up because of all of the sulfur, so let's get that sorted. This sulfur belt is going to be kind of long. Let's go in here. And all of these setups honestly could be using splitters, but I don't want to rebuild the entire factory just using splitters, so as long as the inserter shenanigan works, I would like to continue to use it. And this belt here is kind of unavoidably long, where it finally comes in and brings in the sulfur. And there it goes. The backup has cleared out, and it appears to be working correctly. Looking at the other belts of the factory, there's a lot less empty belts now. That the belts we do have are relatively full, and it's pretty clear what they're all moving, rather than that giant mess of empty belts. And there are other things we could work on with our splitters, but I think it would be diminishing returns at this point. So we should probably continue forward here. We have our underflow, overflow, and check valve. And note that with overflow and underflow, it says to get more information from Factoriopedia. And coming over here, the default shortcuts for the controls of the valve are just numpad plus and minus. Those are pretty convenient. But the thing they're talking about here is that a valve's output cannot be connected to a pump's input. That it'll basically cause problems. The way to stay safe, make one of each valve. Hopefully I don't regret that. Because we would need to use them. But the way you could prevent that is just by always having a gap between the pump and the valve, rather than memorizing the exact situation that you are and aren't allowed to do it. And that's kind of how I handle it. So with these valves, I changed the setting. So the default setting would be 10%, and numpad plus and minus changes that. And the check valve doesn't do anything by itself, but basically you use the check valve as like a mini tank. So you can connect a pump to the valve and it would read its contents basically as a percentage. I believe it holds 100. And then you would just set the pump based on that. So if you didn't have the configurable valves for the Pi valves here, you could gain that functionality just by having this setup here. And this only goes up in 10% increments. So if you wanted like 5%, you could do it with the pump. So that'll give us lots of control options with our fluids without actually using a circuit network, which is nice. And also we got access to a ton of tanks, and I would like to use each tank at least once just to show them off. I do have my preferred tanks, but you can see these are actually pretty heavy on the lead, that we can only make one of the big tanks with the resources that we have. So I'll make one of each and place them down and we can take a look at them. They do take quite a while to build. It is something you might want to consider automating. Just depends on how many tanks you expect to be making. But as you can see, they have a pretty decent crafting time. So the biggest tank is this 100,000 unit one. I don't really like using these big tanks because they're on platforms like this, and it just looks kind of weird. But something else to consider is that each tank has its own assortment of inputs and outputs. So that may or may not be useful to you. And the other big tank here is also on the platforms. And I would say all of the tanks I put on the bottom are ones that I think should go with liquids, and the ones at the top are for the gases just because that's what they look like they're for. So the 80 here looks like it holds liquids, and so does the 70. It's an interesting one where it has two inputs on one side only. And this one, the connections are very close, so that could be kind of awkward as well. You would basically need to have a pump so the pipes don't overlap. And then we have the 65, which looks like it's for gases. And then the 50, it's not entirely clear. That looks like basically a distillation column, essentially. So I would say that's probably for liquids too. Then we have the 40, which looks like it's for liquids. And then the 30, which is very interesting. It's tiny. I would say that's for gases. And then the 15, which sure looks like it's for gases. And the 10, I would say gas, but do you normally put gases so high up? But sure, we'll say that's for gases too. So of all of these tanks, I like to use these two right here, but I will try to use each one at least once, and then I'll just focus on basically these two. Although some of the smaller ones are useful. Like I do like to use this 15 for certain situations, so it just depends on, are you in a situation where you want to hold as many liquids or as few liquids? But let's take the big ones for now, because I already have somewhere I think we can put them in. Man, that's a long time it takes to mine them up. So there's a couple different situations where we can apply our valves, but probably the most immediate is with our tar processing, because the side of it that makes coke is just dumping the coal gas because there's nowhere to put it and there's nothing to do with it. And it's basically being limited on tar, and coke is a byproduct. And then we have our setup here that is making specifically coal gas for mining aluminum. There's certainly overlap between these two setups. So now that we can contain the coal gas and have priority between the two setups, now they can all be interconnected. So we'll need to put this somewhere, and it doesn't really matter where the tank goes, but soon we're going to have more processing options. And looking at the space, going away from the center of our factory is right here. So we probably should put the coal gas tank out here. And there is a pipe coming up too, so that's nice. And there's even a space right here. Sure, why not? We'll put it there. And now we need to set this up correctly. So first, let's just unhook that. And then we'll remove this vent, because now we are going to combine it all. So how about we do this? So there we go. Now it's going to be filling up the tank. And we'll have the output here. And how about a pump as well? The extent limit seems fine, but let's just put it in there because it's going to be one directional at that point. And a nice light here. So that's certainly nice, being able to save the coal gas. It's probably going to start building up. But also we have this setup here for specifically putting coal gas in here, and it's not clear if we need it anymore. And usually when I have multiple setups and I'm not sure if something's any good, I will leave it there and then unhook it and just see if we end up needing it or not. And the level does seem to be going up a little bit, but not a ton. It's actually relatively low, and we don't have combinators yet to show signals. But if you want to see the percent of the tank, you can just hover over one of the pipes, and then you can see the percent of 100 that it is. But let's unhook it for a second, and we can use our underflow valve, and we can basically put it in there. So if the level gets below 10%, it will allow flow. So there's our coal gas. Now that's running again. And if we come up to the tank, it's only going to let flow in if the tank is below 10%, which right now it is, so it's trying to fill it up. But if we connect the other setup again, it's just going to dump its contents no matter what. And now that is keeping it above 10%, and this isn't running. It is filling up the pipe here, but the valve isn't letting anything through anymore. And then we can have another valve on the end here as an overflow for 90%. And then we could put the exhaust pipe here. So how that's going to work then is if the tank is below 10%, this runs, and once it's above, it stops, and all of the output of these machines will continue to fill the tank, and anything that's needed for aluminum will be pumped out. If/when the tank gets above 90%, it just vents the excess. So now the output of both setups are combined, and we are not wasting the coal gas like we were before. Some of it still may be vented, But it's better than just wasting all of this. And we can do some similar logic here for the tar as well, because we really don't need to have the tailings pond, but it is sort of in the way, because that's the perfect place to put a tank. So I think we need another tailings pond somewhere. So we'll plop it in there and have a pump, and now it's going to rapidly fill it up. We have two setups here that create tar as a byproduct. The coal gas setup here and the sulfur setup here. So they always need room to put their output. However, these setups are specifically running to make tar. So they would only need to run to fill up the tank minimally, while we would want to leave the rest of the space for these to run. And technically we don't have a dump. I mean, we could just put it down a sinkhole, but it feels bad, so I'd rather not. But gas is kind of designed to be vented, so I don't feel as bad about that. And you could space some of this stuff out too, if you'd like. It doesn't have to be right next to each other. You can do that. It gives you more things to hover over, but the effect is essentially the same. I do miss having the Nixie tubes. Those are reasonably far away. We're going to need to have PyScience 1 to unlock them, so for the near future we're going to be hovering over tanks to find out their capacity and quantities. Okay, close enough. Let's do our other giant tank, and let's try to line it up a little bit. Sure, we'll do that. And we'll put it in here, and you can put the valves wherever you want. The valve could be right here next to the tank, or you could have the valve right next to the machine that produces the resource. It might be easier to make sense of things rather than having to follow a pipe down. You can just go to the setup that has it, and then you'll know. If we put the underflow there, then we could follow it straight to the machine. And that probably does make a little bit more sense. So we'll do another top-up. I call them top-ups. That's the Angel Bob's way. I guess this is underflow in Pi. That is kind of hard to see right there. So we'll space that out a little bit so we can see it. That will fill up the tank to just 10% and then stop. And then we can have a pump there, sending it to where it needs to go. And of course we're consuming it very readily right now, so the tank is essentially going to be empty. And these setups will always be connected to the tank because they always need to have their output. And now we have logic there. Of course we have a ton of tar in here that we need to push in, and probably the easiest way to do this is actually with our check valve here. And we need to remember to put a space in here just to make sure there's no issues. It's kind of hard to see because the icon's a little bigger there, but we hook it up to the pump, enable or disable, and I wonder if a wildcard would work here. You would think. So if the level is below, let's say 90%, it can work, and it is being told to turn on, so that's good. And let's just hook up the pipes there. So this is going to slowly fill up. Let's make sure it stops, and it does. So now that tank is full. There is still room for these byproducts to go in there, but the primary method of these machines here will stop. And now the output of all of these setups has been combined into these two tanks. And we actually do have enough tar right now, but that's just because we are rapidly draining this pond here, so it's not going to take very long for that pond to be empty, and we are getting quite close on gasoline filling up here. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we're going to continue to streamline our factory's efficiency and get ready for the next science pack. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.